working with color in InDesign. So let's first start by defining process color. So within InDesign, we have different color models, and one of those being a process color. So I am going to open up a couple of my color panels here that we are going to be dealing with. So if you don't see color on your panel dock, go under Window and locate your color and open that up. So I'm going to actually drag mine out. The second panel that I want to have is my swatches. So again, if you don't see swatches over in the panel dock, go under Window and look for swatches. So I'm going to drag this one out. And I'll just place them next to each other here. So this looks a little bit different than you might remember if you've used Illustrator or Photoshop, specifically swatches. It looks a little bit different. So defining process colors or process inks. These are colors that are created by mixing a varying amount of percentages of these CMYK inks. And CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and key, which is what the K stands for, which most all the time is black. So lighter colors, of course, have a lighter percentage, and darker colors have a higher percentage. So if I select a box here, make sure that my fill is in the front, you can see if I drag my cyan to 100%, it's going to be a darker color. So a higher percent equals that. So that's how we create color. Now we'll talk about tints and spot colors and mixed inks coming up here, but just to give an overview, a tint is basically a percentage of a color. So in this case, if I have 100% is my cyan color, a tint of that would be a 50% of it. Okay, so it's just a percentage, a lighter version. A spot color is a predefined, we call it color in a can. That's something that we'll discuss in a later lesson. And mixed colors are things that we will eventually see here in swatches, and they are combinations of at least one spot color with either another spot color or a process color. So let's look here at how we define and store swatches. So in my swatches panel, I have some colors already there. So these are my color swatches. They are created, they're stored in the swatches panel. Now I can update them. All of these are named color swatches as well. So I have named and unnamed, and we'll again, coming up in a moment, talk about unnamed colors. They typically cause problems, specifically in production later on, and you should be avoiding those. So an unnamed color really is something where I would just click and drag and say, yep, this is my color, or I go into my color picker by double clicking on my color and say, okay, yep, this is it, that's my color, and I don't take the time to save it in swatches. This is an unnamed color. This can cause problems later on. So when we see our swatches here, I have some options. At the bottom, I can show all swatches. I can show only my color swatches. I can show only gradient swatches, which I do not have any gradients in here now. And I can show color groups. So those are different views that I can have. All right, at the top of my swatches, as well as my color, and over here in tools, I have my fill and stroke buttons, and they all work together. When I bring my stroke above the fill in the color panel, it happens in swatches, and it happens over here in the tool. So wherever you're playing around with that, it will change that in all. Now, as far as the swatches panel, I do have some other options here. I can choose to view my swatches by name, by small swatch, or by large swatch. You may be more familiar with viewing swatches this way in Illustrator or even in Photoshop. However, I would recommend in InDesign that you don't spend most of your time with this view, that you instead would use more of a name view, and this will be beneficial later on. All right. So how do we create a new swatch? There are a number of ways, of course, that we can create a new swatch, and you're going to become familiar with one, and that's going to be your method. So I can use my swatches panel and go to the options menu here and do new color swatch. When I do that, my new color swatch dialog box opens and I'm able to do some definitions here. First of all, I can choose to name it with my color value. If I uncheck that, then I can put a name in here. So I could name it with my own descriptive name. I'll just name this one class example. So it's either you're naming it like I see right here with my CMYK values, or I have a descriptive name. Depends on what you're looking to do. The color type, so I have two options here, process, which is CMYK, or spot, which is what we'll talk about in a moment. That's the predefined color in a can. So I'll stick with process. And then my color model or my mode. So these are where I can choose CMYK, RGB, or any of these spot color libraries. Now I'm going to stay with CMYK because I'm working with process. And then of course you have your percentages where you're going to mix the inks. Okay, so I can select my amounts here and then click OK. And when I do that, look what happens in swatches. I now have a class example purple color at the bottom of my list. This is my new named swatch. Okay. The other way that I can do this is if I'm in my color picker, again, I just double clicked on my fill, chose this color, click OK. I can just use my new swatch icon here, and I don't have all of those options that I had in my dialog box. It doesn't even open my dialog box, but I can see that I've added it there. Okay. So those are a couple different methods that we can add swatches. Now how about creating a tint? I said a tint is a lighter version. So a couple of really fast ways. Let's just go back up here to my regular old cyan. This is an easy one to see. So a process color is reducing the amount of ink that defines the color. That's how it's printed. And a spot color we can do a tint of, which basically screens that base color. So in my swatches panel, again, I'm going to select the base color, and this is the color from which my tint will be based from. And then I'm going to use my swatches panel options button right here and choose new tint swatch. When I click that, I get my new tint swatch dialog box, and I'm able to drag at the very bottom here. These are all grayed out. This is what we would see when we do a new swatch. But right down here, I'm just going to drag, and let's take it to 50%. Oops, missed. Let's type it in. A little bit easier to get to that exact point. And then I can choose to click OK, or I can choose Add. Tint value already exists. Oh, I already have one. Let's just click OK. I think it's right here. I have one right here already, so it was smart enough to know. Let's do 75%. And I'll click Add. And there it is. And the nice thing about doing add is now I actually can go in and do another one. So let's do 15%. I'm pressing tab and not OK. If I click my enter key, it's going to OK, and it won't let me keep adding. So if I know there's a few of them that I want to do at a time, I can leave that open by clicking add and continue. So actually, if you look here, here's my 50. Let's select this so you can see what's going on. Here's my 50. So this is the full amount, 100. Here's 50. Here's 25. These are the ones I just made. Here's 75, and here's 15. So those are the tints. Now, what if we wanted to select it a different way? So when I have a color selected here, you can see that in my color panel, it actually is prepping me for a percentage. So if I do 100%, okay, so if I get my color here, all I need to do is click my new icon, and here it is, class example at 38%. So by selecting my color and then choosing my percentage and clicking new swatch, it does a tint from that. So I'm defining my base in my color panel this time. So whatever way you feel comfortable with. Now, one thing to note, when I do, in this case, this class example, if I want to change this color a smidge, let's just add a little bit more, let's add a little bit more magenta and less cyan. Click OK. When I do that, my tints are also updated. So those are linked, they're connected, which is really, really nice. So now on to those unnamed colors. What is an unnamed color? It's basically a color that I don't save in my swatches panel. So if I select this and I go ahead and I choose this color, this is the color, or if I double click to get into my color picker, okay, that's the color, and I keep working. I go over here and I do, and this is my color, and I don't save them in my swatches panel. That's an unnamed color. Now, it's not saved anywhere, and that's where the problem comes in. Because it's not saved anywhere, if I show this to the client and they say, oh, I really don't want that green, I'd rather have a blue. Okay, well, that's easy. So let's just double click and we'll get into our blue range, and yep, here's my perfect color. I show it to my client, and now they say, oh gosh, I really, I'm sorry, I really don't like that blue. I want the green back. Okay, how do I get the green back? I did not save it in swatches. It's not there. So I have to try to go off of memory. I'm not going to hit it perfect. So that's why, that's a big key why we don't use unnamed colors. The other is, what if I've got multiple objects filled with the same color? So let's just say, for easy sake, let's do a 70 and 50. So this color would be 70, 50, 0, 0. And we go over here and we apply the same one, 70, 50, 0, 0. Right? Those are the same colors. And I have this happening throughout my multiple page document. And now I decide, oh shoot, I don't need blue, I need yellow. Well, if it was assigned, I would be able to change the color over in swatches, and it would apply it to all of those. In an unnamed color that's applied to multiple objects, if I want to edit that color, I'd have to go and individually change each one, which can be hugely time consuming. So the easiest way, really, I can just click and drag this thing straight from my color panel right into swatches. I don't have to mess around with new dialog boxes. I just click and drag it. It's there. And now it's assigned. Let's assign that one. And so if I decide, oh gosh, that's not the right color, I can double click and I can edit and see how they're all updated. So those are some benefits of using named colors. So basically, if you're going to create a color that you're applying in your document, just drag that swatch from the color into the swatches and save it. It will be saved with your document, so the next time you open it, you'll have all your colors there.